I'm Dave Baker.
And I'm Andrew Price.
Welcome to Deep Cuts, the podcast where we pick a topic and walk you through the ins, the outs, and the nitty-gritty so that you can appear like an interesting and idiosyncratic person at your next forced social function. Today's topic is...
RL Stein.
Who is RL Stein? Well, he's the author of the immensely popular Goosebumps and Fear Street book series, who, at the height of his success, entered into a lengthy legal battle with his publisher, Scholastic. But today, we'll be diving into the secret history of the man truly responsible for the success of Goosebumps. A guy you've probably never heard of, named Tim Jacobus. Act 1. Listener beware, you're in for a highly informational podcast episode about Goosebumps. If you were a kid growing up in the 90s, Goosebumps was inescapable. School libraries were packed with almost every installment. And anytime the Scholastic Book Fair came around, kids spent their hard-earned allowances to get Monster Blood, Welcome to Camp Nightmare, The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, or any of the countless other titles within the series. The Goosebumps series has sold over 400 million copies worldwide, making it the second best-selling series of all time, only behind Harry Potter. And there was one man who always seemed solely responsible for Goosebumps being the way it was: RL Stein. His name was emblazoned on the cover of each copy, immediately turning him into the Stephen King of children's horror. But there's more to Stein than you've probably thought. So let's open up this cuckoo clock of doom and see how Goosebumps came to be, how its cultural legacy faded, and who's really behind the book's success. R.L. Stein was born Robert Lawrence Stine on October 8, 1943 in Columbus, Ohio. He began writing at the age of 9 after finding an old typewriter in the family attic. Inspired by Tales from the Crypt and the Vault of Horror, Stein began writing his own stories, joke books. He edited the humor magazine The Sundial while a student at Ohio State University, which he graduated from in 1965. He promptly moved to New York City to pursue a career as a writer, and his first big success was creating the humor magazine Bananas under the name Jovial Bob Stein.
Do you think that R.L. Stein and Jeff Smith ever cross paths in Columbus, Ohio, and they were both just
I mean, it's such a small place.
Coming up with their masterpieces in their minds as they walk by each other?
I would kind of be surprised because they're a little, he's a little older than Jeff Smith, but I kind of love that idea. Also, Smith stayed in Columbus. He still lives there. It's
just interesting. It's interesting that, there's probably more, but it's just interesting that there's these two specific guys from Columbus who obviously the products are wildly different, but as we'll get into, they're almost identical in as far as they were these massive publishing institutions that created a new type of business in the publishing world and made these two specific guys insanely rich. And They were both published by the same company. It's kind of interesting.
Well, it's kind of the same thing with, Ohio has a lot of weird history like that, Siegel and Schuster come out of there, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There's a lot of comics people there. Bendis is from there. It's a small place, but it also has a lot of stuff that's come from there. It was basically Mad Magazine for kids and teens with TV parodies like Merc and Mundane for Mork and Mindy, or The Bong Show as opposed to The Gong Show. 72 issues of Bananas were published by Scholastic between 1975 and 1984, and Stein would make his first foray into horror with the 1986 novel Blind Date. But Stein fell into the horror genre completely by coincidence and being at the right place at the right time, as he explained himself.
I was having lunch with my friend Jean Faywell, who was a publisher at Scholastic, and she arrived angry. She'd had a fight with a guy who wrote teen horror novels, and she said, "I'm never working with him again. I bet you could write a good horror novel for teenagers. go home and write a book called Blind Date. I didn't know what she was talking about. What is a horror novel for teenagers? So I had to run to the bookstore and buy up a whole bunch of books by Lois Duncan and Christopher Pike and see. Then I wrote this book, Blind Date. It was a #1 bestseller. I thought, wait a minute. Forget the funny stuff. Kids like to be scared. I've been scary ever since.
Blind Date is about a man who becomes obsessed with the sexy voice of a woman he hears over the phone. Reviews, they were mixed. But like Stine said, it was a hit, so he wrote several other teenage-oriented horror stories like The Babysitter, The Girlfriend, and Hit and Run.
Hold on. I'll be right back. I gotta grab something. Just wait. Hold on. All right, here we go. Now I'm prepared. We got The Babysitter 1, The Babysitter 2, Babysitter 3.
Damn, dude, you're here. You're out here in these streets. You're repping for old Bob. 1989 would be a huge year for Stine, as he started the Fear Street series for Parachute Press, a publishing company which Stine would start with his wife, Jane. That same year, Stine was hired as the head writer for the Nickelodeon series Eureka's Castle, a puppet show aimed toward young children that's like if Sesame Street didn't bother to have any lessons. Then one day, co-founder of Parachute Press, Joan Eureka, spoke to Stine about developing a horror book series specifically aimed at young kids, not teenagers. As a common throughout Stine's career, he said, sure, and got to work. He signed a 6-book deal with Scholastic and came up with the name Goosebumps off the TV Guide ad reading, "It's Goosebumps Week on Channel 11. In 1992, the first batch of Goosebumps books came out, including Welcome to Dead House, Stay Out of the Basement, and Monster Blood. Oh my gosh, look at those paintings.
Yep. Yeah.
For the audience, Andrew is holding up a bunch of Goosebumps books that he still has.
Yeah. If it wasn't clear before, I held up the first 3 Babysitter books, and then which the paintings aren't quite as good. They didn't lock in with the vibe yet, but they're not terrible. They're more like emulating like 1970s era like slasher horror posters, basically. Like they look very much like he was trying to write like. The books are supposed to be like Halloween for teenagers. That's just like literally what they are. Yeah. But then we get these babies, and we're gonna get into this. We're gonna. This is what this whole episode is about. But these paintings on these fucking books are amazing. These are the first 3 Goosebumps books, 1, 2, and 3. It's Welcome to Dead House, Stay Out of the Basement, and Monster Blood. And there's tons of other books. I think there's 137, something around there, 150, something like that. They're all here in this box of the original run, and there's a bunch of other paintings that are like very, very cool as well, and I'll show some of them also. But that being said, I think all in all, my favorite book and also cover has got, or at least one of them has got to be Monster Blood. Like I've been so transfixed with this cover for like most of my life. Like from the moment that I saw this book, I was just like obsessed, and I just kind of never stopped being obsessed with this book series because of this cover. It's just so amazing. It's just like,
it's basically like stairs that are lit by a red orangish light, and dripping down the stairs of this supposedly, kind of quotidian suburban home is green, almost glowing monster blood.
Yeah, and there's a pair of glasses in them, implying that like somebody got slimed or got turned into slime, or you don't know. And there's really, it's just the striking thing about it, and the striking thing about a lot of these is that like it's really it's pretty basic. It's like you said, it's a staircase with like some slime coming down it, but the just everything about it is so evocative that it just creates this perfect atmosphere, and it's like it crystallizes the the attention grabbing nature of what art can be, which is kind of the point, as we'll get into. Well, before we go on, we got to talk about this a little bit before we get in more into the actual story, get into the lawsuit, get into the artist, get into Tim Jacobus. What was your first exposure to Goosebumps? Did you read the books? Were you interested in the books? How did you first learn about them? Like, what was your experience?
I had a bunch of them. I think the first one I encountered was, is there one where a comic book character comes to life and tries to kill a kid, and he's like wearing like a purple jumpsuit, and he has like maybe like a yellow domino mask, or a yellow and purple domino mask maybe. That I think that was my first one, or at least it's the one that stuck out in my memory the most. But I had a bunch of them. I really enjoyed them, and also the TV show. It was like a 1-2 punch where, like, between the books, I really liked the books, and then the TV show came out. Yeah.
Attack of the Mutant. Yep. This is also one of my favorites. So this book is one of my favorites because of the cover as well. Which once again is just very evocative, because it's like it's very unlike the rest of the books, because the books are mostly just like sort of suburban horror, and then this one is like a superhero, so it kind of stood out. And also it's also evocative because it's like it's like the superhero character, and he's just like in like looks like he's in like a power plant in the middle of like some
but he's like chasing
town,
you, which is kind of creepy.
And it's like, what is going on here? Where is this guy? Who is this guy? What is he doing? Everything about it is just so evocative and so attention grabbing. And also I love this book, and also the audio book of this, which I checked out from the library when I was a kid and listened to one time, or listened to it multiple times because I liked it, was narrated by Richard Horvitz, the guy who was the voice of Zim and Daggett in the Angry Beavers, which I liked listening to that. But yeah, this Attack of the Mutant. But anyway, continue.
I was just gonna say, like, that was the one that like stuck out the most to me as a kid. And like, I read a bunch of them. I had a bunch of them. They were always around. I think my parents were just excited that I was reading stuff. Yeah. How did you come in contact with them?
I think probably similarly to most people, which was I saw them at a Scholastic book fair. Many a meme has been made about Scholastic book fairs and just this quintessential nostalgic millennial experience where you there was a day when you just went to school and you got to walk into the library, and it was just like it was just the land of milk and honey. It was just like Shangri-La if you liked reading books. And the way that it was all set up, just everything was just like, oh my God, it's like paradise. Like, what are those? What are those? What are those? And that was where I first saw the books. It had to have been in like somewhere around like 96, 97, maybe 98. I forget when, what does it say? Does it say the year?
I think we're in the early 90s, like 92.
Yeah,
July of 92.
I forget. I mean, I made a video, a TikTok video about this, so I have research about it, but I'm just kind of I'm blanking on the dates and stuff like that. But I think the book series really started to get pick up steam and get popular in like 96 or 7, and that was around the time that I saw them at a Scholastic books fair. And I think this was the first book I read. Was Night of the Living Dummy 3. This was the very first Goosebumps book I read. I don't remember why. It was just the one. It was just the first one I ever picked up and grabbed. The cover isn't even like that great. It's not even one of my favorites by at all. But the first Night of the Living Dummy book cover is amazing. But for whatever reason, I grabbed this book and read it, and then from that point on, I read this book, and I didn't have any context for what it was because it's a third part in a 3-part story. And then I read the first 2, and then I read Monster Blood, and then I read all of them. But yeah, I saw them at a Scholastic book fair that was being held in my. I was homeschooled, but we had like a book fair thing that was like open to the public. So cut to 1996, Roswell, New Mexico, whatever year. We went to this book fair that was being held in my town at a school. I forget where. I barely have any memory of this. I remember that we went to this book fair, and I see this book. I get Night of the Living Dummy 3. I also get, and I've referenced this on the show before. We've talked about this on the show before, but I also get a mini biography of Jim Carrey and a mini biography of Bill Clinton, my two favorite people when I was a kid. I get these 3 books, right? So my point is that this one night had a lot of connective tissue to a lot of different things. So I get these 3 books, Goosebumps, and then these 2 other books that I've talked about on the show before, that for whatever reason I had an infatuation with Bill Clinton and named my goldfish Bill Clinton and Bob Dole. Also, my younger brother, we go there, and there's a Clifford the Big Red Dog mascot guy. There's a guy dressed in a Clifford the Big Red Dog mascot suit walking around, like talking to kids or saying hi to kids or whatever. And my brother, who's like, I don't know, 4, I forget how old he was. He's like super young. He is mortally terrified by this Clifford the Big Red Dog guy. He starts screaming. It's literally so bad that we have to leave. Like, he is mortally terrified of the Clifford the Big Red Dog. So we buy the books and we leave. By sheer coincidence, I swear to God, the Clifford the Big Red Dog guy lived at our apartment complex. So when we got home, he was there. In
the costume?
The Clifford guy in the costume was at our apartment when we got there. Like, we might have went and got frozen yogurt for some reason. We got there and the book fair might have ended or whatever, or I don't know, but we got home and he was there in the parking lot in costume. We leave because my brother is just and we're just we gotta, no, it's okay. And we leave and we get home and he's there. From my brother's perspective, this eldritch beast followed us and he starts screaming. And then the guy goes, no, it's okay. And he takes off the head. And then my brother's like, from his perspective, this fucking monster takes off its head and there's a person inside.
But the funny thing is, why was he still wearing the costume at your guy's house? Did he drive home dressed as
there was 2 people. He was with somebody else. So I guess the other person drove, or maybe they walked or whatever. Roswell's small, and I don't really remember the details of this. This literally could have been a library that was within blocks of my house. I don't remember. But he was there. He just happened to live at the same apartment complex, or was visiting somebody who lived there. I don't know. I don't know these details. We didn't ask, and also it was fucking 25 years ago. But he was fucking there in the costume.
That's terrifying to me as an adult, let alone as a 4-year-old.
It was so funny. But yeah. Anyway, aside from that, one of those. It's the only opportunity I could have ever had to bring up that story. But aside from that. The main point is that was whenever I first discovered it, and I became obsessed with this book series. I have all of them are down here. I have every single one of the first run. I have a couple of Goosebumps 2000 books, but I had lost interest by that point with the Goosebumps 2000 series that came out, which we'll get to it. But basically, they sort of rebooted the series because he wasn't writing them anymore. But yeah, I have all of them. I even have doubles of them. I have 4 copies of Monster Blood, and I have 2 copies of the first like 15 books because I bought every book, but then I also got into the Goosebumps fan club, and in the fan club they would send you 1 book every month. So for the first 15 books, I just have 2 of them. But yeah, needless to say, I loved this book series quite a lot when I was younger.
Welcome to Dead House is particularly notable for being more disturbing than the other Goosebumps books. Characters die, a pet dies. Andrew's holding up the book cover right now. And there's references to blood and gore in the story about a family moving into a new house where the town's residents are secretly undead. This is something that Stine would avoid for the remainder of the Goosebumps run.
Yeah, that's something interesting to note, is like what it's saying is true, that the first book is like strangely darker than the other ones, and also the other books, the Babysitter series books, like they're not actually, like, no person today would say that like a child should read these books. Like they are weirdly dark and scary, and like it's about a teenage babysitter who's being stalked by a serial killer. Like they are very dark. Like there was definitely like a time when he was writing like young adult fiction in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s, where number one, like the idea of like what was appropriate for like younger people was not what it is today. Number two, he just wasn't trying to make it for kids, even within those contexts. And number three, his books hadn't gotten so popular that he was getting scrutiny and getting, millions and millions of kids to read his shit and have their parents being like, "What are you reading?" So his early books they're supposed to be for kids, but they're kind of not. And then from that point on, after Dead House comes out, then they become aggressively just for kids, like to the point where kind of the main point of this episode is going to be like, these books are low-key not very good, and they mostly just were popular because of the covers. I have some rules. No one ever dies in a Goosebumps book. If there happens to be ghosts and they are dead, it happened before the book starts. And I don't do any real serious problems. Kids have to know this is a creepy fantasy and it couldn't really happen.
Fun fact, George A. Romero of Night of the Living Dead fame wrote a feature-length screenplay to adapt Welcome to Dead House, except with more gore and social commentary, but it never got off the ground because we're not allowed to have nice things. Thanks to the Scholastic Book Fair, a week-long event that the publisher would hold at schools all across the country for kids to buy affordable books, Goosebumps was an instant smash. Dozens of other titles followed, each one selling millions of copies. An anthology series with each episode focused on a different book premiered on the Fox network in 1995, and there was even talks of a Goosebumps movie materializing in the 90s with Tim Burton producing and possibly directing, but that ultimately fell through.
Viewers beware, you're in for a scare.
Viewer beware, you're in for a scare.
Yeah, dude, that's some good shit right there.
This shit was crack for like a kid who was just like into like spooky stuff.
And also just like it's so clearly influenced by EC Comics and like the Tales from the Crypt, and then the fact that the show is like almost a better Tales from the Crypt than the actual Tales from the Crypt show. Like, it's amazing. It's really impressive. And also, I love the fact that he is centered so much in it. And, like, there's the fictionalized kind of man with the dark suit walking up with the little briefcase that says RL Stein on it. Like, that's the good version of Todd McFarlane giving those intros on the Spawn cartoon, you know, being like, darkness, what is chains? You know, I'm Todd McFarlane.
What did you watch the show? I'm assuming.
I loved the show. Yeah, I loved the show. Yeah. And also, that it's such an interesting version of like them trying to thread the needle of like, it is creepy, but also it needs to be age appropriate for children. And like, even if you just had that exact intro, but everything took place at night, it would be so much more effective. But you can tell they were like, it can't be that creepy, so we got to do it in broad daylight.
Yeah, we're in Toronto, eh? We got it.
Yeah.
It's got to be during the day. We can't scare the pants off these youths.
Yeah.
Ryan Gosling's going to be in several of these. I remember like funny because I had like almost the opposite experience. I remember that when the show came out, I remember there was like people, friends, and also my cousin was really into Goosebumps as well, that were kind of like, oh, this show is like not as good as the fucking books. Like there was like this weird like young kid pretentious like the book is better than the movie type energy around it.
Yeah.
But then I rewatched Goosebumps like not recently, but recently enough. Back in like when I first moved to LA, I sat and watched a bunch of Goosebumps episodes because they put it on Netflix with my roommates. Friend of the show, Brandon, and a couple other people. A listener of the show, Matt Kiley, Mike Bedard. He was there, of course. Writer and person who wrote this episode that we're doing right now. We all watched these episodes, and they actually hold up. Like the show isn't bad. Like it holds up for like a kids 90s like show based on a popular book series.
There were Goosebumps video games, a fan club, and unimaginable piles of miscellaneous merch. There was even a promotion where many Goosebumps books were included in bags of chips for kids to get a tiny dose of terror with each snack. As is the case with any popular thing enjoyed by children, there were challenges to ban Goosebumps. From 1990 to 1999, the series was the 15th most banned/challenged book in the US.
It's so goofy. It's so goofy. Like
it's so goofy.
Like as I alluded to earlier, like these books, like it's everything we talked about in the Satanic Panic and the other episode about the guy who like was arrested for false accusations. It's everything like that about Dungeons and Dragons, where it's just like if you really actually knew what this game was like, you would not be saying this is some satanic thing. It's the same thing. It's like if you actually read a Goosebumps book, it's just like it's a 50-year-old guy who started off his career writing joke books trying to write horror.
Yeah, it's just like, don't go in the basement. There's some kind of creepy stuff down there.
And it's also just like a dude like trying to write from the perspective of like an 11-year-old kid, and like it just the frames of references and it's just Hello Fellow Kids, the book series. Like the way that he writes trying to sound like a kid is just so funny. It's like the references he tries to make, and it's ridiculous. It's the idea that this is like some evil thing that needed to be banned is like one of the goofiest ideas you could possibly have.
One notable example came from a school in Bay County, Florida, based on the idea of the series promoted demonic possession and satanic symbolism, but the school board decided to keep the books within the school's library, admitting that while they weren't high literature, they at least got kids reading. If that sounds harsh to Stine's writing, it's good to remember that he'd probably agree with the assessment. In one interview, he was asked if there was any deeper meaning to The Haunted Mask, a story about a girl who puts on a Halloween mask and then becomes unable to take it off. To which Stine replied,
I didn't really think of that. When my son was little, he was trying on a green Frankenstein mask and he was pulling it down over his face and he couldn't get it off. And he was tugging. I thought, what a great idea for a story. I should have helped him. It wasn't a good parent. I wasn't a good parent that day.
That's so good. That's so good.
It's so good, but also it's just like, it's so true. Like, I mean, I not that specific thing. And also, I don't think I've ever like just not helped a child like in need of help or whatever. But that's what I'm doing all day. I'm just like, my one of my kids does something weird, and I'm just like, that would be a good idea for a thing. And then I like write it down.
And that drives home the appeal of Goosebumps. They were just fun reads. They were a little scary and they had a few silly moments thrown in for good measure. Kids, mostly between the ages of 8 and 12, wanted to read them. And undoubtedly, Goosebumps was a first foray into horror for young kids who, want to seek out more mature horror books and movies as they got older. But something inevitably happens when a property becomes ubiquitous within pop culture. Everyone wants to get a bigger slice of the pie. When they signed the contract, it was decided that Parachute would own the series' trademark, but Scholastic would have control over all non-publication rights, meaning they would have final say over the TV adaptation or various merchandise. Parachute also agreed that Stine would be the sole writer of any and all Goosebumps books. The initial agreement only included 6 books, but with the massive success, Parachute and Scholastic signed on for more. This included a bevy of spin-offs like Give Yourself Goosebumps, which was a choose-your-own-adventure style horror story. Scholastic was shipping out 4 million copies of Goosebumps a month to keep up with the demand. Oh, yep, there he's got that one too, folks. He's got that one too. He's holding it. He's holding it.
Here's a Give Yourself Goosebumps. The Beware of the Purple Peanut Butter. They're just choose your own adventure books, but number one, with a little bit more of a Goosebumpsy flair to them. But also, choose your own adventure is a copyrighted term that you're not allowed to use unless you're the company that owns it. So when people want to do a choose your own adventure style thing, they have to give it a different name.
Scholastic was reaping the benefits of its ability to license Goosebumps handsomely, and Parachute wanted a bigger cut. Stine and Warika met with the heads of Scholastic, Dick Robinson, to attain control over Goosebumps licensing as well as an extra $10 million signing bonus. To absolutely no one's surprise, Scholastic said no, which makes sense, seeing as Goosebumps was garnering a full half of the company's profits. However, the two companies had to re-up the agreement in November of 1996. During this meeting, Parachute obtained the ability to negotiate licensing deals, with Scholastic maintaining final say. Scholastic also increased the amount of royalties it would pay to Parachute from any Goosebumps sales, but there was a provision that any breaking of the contract would render it null and void. Soon, a schism would emerge between the two companies. From something that was far scarier than ghosts, we're talking about ghost writers. Yeah, it's fascinating though when these big publishing
Speaking
deals
of people
like
who use ghostwriters, Dave, you have anything to plug?
Yes, my ghostwriter Esteban would really like you to read Mary Tyler Moorhawk and or my upcoming book Pumpkinheads and or my other upcoming book Halloween Boy, which are available for pre-order now. Andrew, speaking of great segues, is there anything you would like to?
What were you gonna? I don't want to jump on a real thing you were trying to say. I had to say that. I had to make that joke. But what were you saying?
It's fine. It's fine. It's just one of those. It's always interesting to me how these things get this specific type of behind the scenes acrimony spools up in creative dynamics. Like the Walking Dead guys, having a lawsuit between each other. Stan Lee suing Marvel, Marv Wolfman suing his various publishers at different points in time, specifically Marvel around the time the Blade movie came out. Like, there's all of these kind of like, it is kind of interesting that when something is a success, there is just an inevitability that everybody's going to be pissed off with how it's working.
Yeah, and I mean the obvious reason for that is because in a lot of things, but I think very much primarily in creative fields, the dynamic always works in this very unideal way for most of the people involved, which is that like there's two things happening. The first one is that creative people don't really want to get mired down in a bunch of like business negotiations. They're not really thinking about things in that way. Like when you write something, you're really not starting off from a standpoint of like, you know, I need to lock down the publishing of this. Like you're just like I'm just going to write this thing or whatever. And then the second thing is that you can never anticipate that it's going to do well. So like every one of these things always starts off in this place where you've created this thing, and the conditions and the agreements that are all built around it would all be very bad for many of the people involved if the thing did blow up and do very well. And then the thing blows up and does very well. And then suddenly everyone's just like, fuck, like we didn't lock this shit down at all. Like the way the deal that this is set up on sucks. And then it just becomes this like struggle for everybody involved to try and get their piece of the pie because they just did not approach it correctly, because they could have never in a million years predicted that it was going to become successful.
Yeah, and I think there's also just kind of like there's like a history of a permission structure of like the gift that the publisher is giving you is the initial contract, and if by a miracle something goes well, don't rock the boat. You know,
yeah.
Like it's, we're all doing well. Just accept that this is going good, you know?
Yeah. And I yeah, for sure. And for some people that ends up, well, aside from the lawsuit we're going to get into, for some people that kind of works out pretty well, like our boy RL Stein. For other people, not as much.
It rarely works out well. Like rarely does it work out well. Yeah. But speaking of working out well, Andrew, should we talk about our Patreon? Because that's working out pretty well.
Yeah. So here's the thing, Davey. We got ourselves a Patreon. We're out here. We're making content. We're recording podcasts. We're making YouTube videos. We're having the time of our lives, really, honestly, at the end of the day. Like, you know, we've been doing this for free for quite a few years here. We make a little bit of ad money. You've heard the ads. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to pretend like we don't have ads on the show and there's that money's going to the fucking void. But it's, you know, it's about enough to pay for the various hosting fees and maybe a little bit of, you know, paying a freelancer here and there to write a script or, you know, do some editing work or something like that. Like, you know, we're virtually doing this for free. So we've launched this Patreon, patreon.com/Mystery Treehouse or bit.ly/Deep Cuts Patreon. You can back the boys. You can get the goods. You can pump the page.
Pump that page. Pump it up, pump it up, pump it up.
3 exciting ways. For $5 a month, you become a junior sleuth and you're just supporting the show. You're supporting everything that we do. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And you also get ad-free versions of every episode, and you get a shout out in every episode. For just $1 more, for $6 a month, you become a Junior Sleuth Plus. And you get all that stuff. Plus, you get access to our first tier of bonus content, plus some merch drop discounts, plus a few other cool things. Check it out. bit.ly/Deep Cuts Patreon. For $10 a month, you become a Senior Sleuth. And you get all of that. Plus, you get access to our second tier of bonus content, plus a monthly live stream episode where we record the show like normal, but we're live streaming it. You can watch as you can watch how the sausage gets made, and you can also chat with us, and we'll respond to chats, and then that might make it into the episode. And more merch drop discounts and some other cool stuff. So check it all out. bit.ly/Deep Cuts Patreon. Back the boys, pump the page, get the goods. You can also get my book, Deadbolt AI Private Eye, by going to dapricerights.com. You can get our merch by going to deepcutspod.com and clicking on the shop. You can get hats, shirts, onesies, fanny packs, coffee mugs, so on and so forth. You can follow us on social media by going to Instagram at Deep Cuts Pod, Facebook, Deep Cuts Podcast. join our Facebook group. You can join our Discord, bit.ly.com/deepcutsdiscord. You can follow us on TikTok at Mystery Treehouse. And last, but certainly not least, you can check out our YouTube channel, Mystery Treehouse, youtube.com/@Mystery Treehouse. We make long form explainer videos, kind of like the show, except for less of the discussion part and more of just like the explainer and analysis and video essay part. We put out a video recently about the similar to this episode. Actually, it's kind of like a sister video in many ways, but it's a long form 25-minute long video about the ongoing legal battle of the band Ghost, and how it started off as this like mysterious masked collective, and then over time it was revealed that it was just one specific guy, and he was kind of controlling it like a business, and his bandmates didn't really think of it that way. And then there was a lawsuit, and then it kind of changed the band in interesting ways. And we have a whole video about it, and we'll have more to come. We're also going to be posting a long form 30-minute something video about the history of the band Gorillaz soon.
Get ghosted, am I right?
Get ghosted.
Get roasted. That didn't work.
Yeah, but I mean,
anyway.
the Ghost episode, it's got ghosts in it. It's got a legal battle. If you're liking what you're hearing so far, go check it out. YouTube.com/@Mystery Treehouse. But yeah, back to the show.
Act 2. Bad Monster Blood. If you were a kid in 1997, Goosebumps seemed ever present.
You said Ghostbumps.
Fuck me. Ghostbumps? Kind of a good title for something, though.
Can we just talk about real quick, now that you've said that, can we talk about the fact that like Goosebumps is just like not actually a good name?
No, Goosebumps is not a good name. It's not a good name at all. No.
It's like,
especially because like it's just gross.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. It's not a good.
It's supposed to evoke an emotion, and also because I grew up reading these books, I like the name it's greater than the sum of its parts now. Where like it's so iconic that when I look at it, I don't see it. I see the iconography. It's kind of like the fact that like the Disney logo, the little D at the beginning, it kind of looks like a G, like a backwards G, but you don't really intellectualize it because it's not a D or a G. It's the Disney logo. It's iconography. It's kind of like that.
It's like some of these, we've had this conversation before of like when something stops being the original meaning of the word and just becomes a sound symbolizing something greater. Like the Beatles is a bad name for a band.
Yeah.
It's a shitty pun.
Yes.
Like it's not good, but they're the most important band, arguably, of all time. So I think most people don't even realize that the Beatles is a pun about like beat,
I don't think,
like
I don't
a backbeat,
think they, I don't think they
and
do.
bugs.
Yeah, it's just the Beatles. Like you said, it's a sound that represents something that exists outside of the context of the actual words that are being said. And the same thing is true for Goosebumps. But when you actually think about it, like when you actually intellectualize it, it's a bad name because it's like Goosebumps. It's like it's representing just like weird little like bumps appearing on your skin. It's not good.
Yeah, agreed. If you were a kid in 1997, Goosebumps seemed ever present. New books were still coming out and the TV show was going strong. And Walt Disney World opened the Goosebumps Horrorland Fright Show and Funhouse at its MGM studios. It was a great time to be a Goosebumps fan, but maybe not a Goosebumps publisher. In February of that year, Scholastic announced the sale of Goosebumps had dropped drastically, causing the company's stock to plummet. Shareholders would sue Scholastic, saying that they knew about the decreased sales sooner than they let on. Things also turned frostier between Scholastic and Parachute. 16 licensing deals fell through due to disagreements over the two companies on how best to proceed with the Goosebumps brand. Scholastic accused Parachute of making licensing deals behind Scholastic's back, which was reason enough for the company to declare that the new contract was null and void. They then returned to the lower royalty rate from the previous contract. Parachute sued Scholastic for breach of contract, and Scholastic countersued, saying that Parachute had breached the contract first by employing ghostwriters to work on Goosebumps. As per the agreement, ghostwriters were okay for any spin-offs, but not for the main series. That, to me, is a really funny wrinkle in this contract, because they're like, it's like a poison pill. They're like, okay, we'll give you a higher royalty rate, we'll give you control over licensing, but nobody other than RL Stein can do the writing. There's no ghostwriters. Obviously knowing that he uses ghostwriters
that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. You're 100% right. They intentionally put that into the contract, knowing that it at any time, it was basically like, we will look the other way until we want to cancel this contract and get out of it. It was like a little failsafe that embedded into it that worked, because from RL Stein's perspective, he's just like, of course I don't use ghostwriters. Like, what? That's of course I don't.
In this public setting of legally binding contracts, I do not use ghostwriters. Shut up, dude. Go back into the basement. Keep typing.
Stay in the fucking basement. But Scholastic was just like, yeah, sure, of course, you definitely don't use ghostwriters. We know, that's why we're putting it into the contract, because it's not going to affect anything. And then they're just like, just put a pin in that. Like they absolutely put that in there on purpose, so that they could just pull that pin at any moment to get out of the contract whenever they wanted to, because they knew, like, he's using ghostwriters. Like, there's no way that this dude is writing like 70 of these things a month. Just on that note, it's just funny because it's funny. It's not funny because I chose to do this episode now because of this. It wasn't like a coincidence, but we've had this episode for a while, and then I saw a video a couple days ago, and then I was like, oh, we should just do that episode. But there was somebody on TikTok who made a skit, like a sketch video about RL Stein, and the joke of it was, and it was like, she was clearly a Goosebumps super fan because she was wearing a Goosebumps shirt, and she had, like, in the background of her video was just like bookshelves of like just a wall of books, and like a bunch of them were just like horror books, Stephen King, and then like Goosebumps books. So she was obviously a huge fan, and she was making a skit where basically she was like, Scholastic, the word Scholastic over her head, and it was like, can you write this book series called Goosebumps or whatever? And then it cuts to another version of her with RL Stein over her head. She's like, sure, here's the first one. And she hands them Dead House. And then they're like, oh, actually, people are really liking these. Could you write another one? And then it cuts to her holding like 5 books in her hand. And she's like, here you go. And they're just like, wow, oh man, this is really doing well. Can you write like more of these? And then it cuts to her holding like stacks of books in her hand and being like, here you go. And like the joke is that he just cranked out books and he was like a really prolific writer. And it's just like, no, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. He was a guy who wrote joke books, saw a business opportunity, started writing this book series, saw that it was gaining traction, and then was just like, hey, 5 junior writers living in Columbus, Ohio, or whatever the fuck, can you just start writing these things for me? It's just funny. It's funny how people, it's not funny, but it's funny how people gain these reputations for things that they did not do. Like the Stan Lee of it all.
Scholastic claimed that Stine had written the first 16 Goosebumps books, but starting with Why I'm Afraid of Bees, he started using ghostwriters. He would provide an outline, they would write the full book, and then Stine would review, making minimal edits. Scholastic even went a step further and said that his use of ghostwriters contributed to the decline in sales because they were unable to match Stine's unique writing style and tone. Stine released a statement in light of these accusations saying that he wrote all of the books, which at that point, there were 24 releasing a year. However, Parachute did admit in a lawsuit filing to the use of ghostwriters, but claimed that Stine still made all the majority of the creative decisions. Amid all of this, Scholastic continued publishing Goosebumps books, including spin-offs and a new series called Goosebumps 2000. but sales continued going downhill. It didn't help that there was a new kid on the block named Harry Potter, which Scholastic obtained the US rights to. If Goosebumps was a hit, Harry Potter was a full seismic event, and the official new mandatory reading for kids aged 8 to 12, Goosebumps' primary demographic. From a high of 4 million sales a month to just 200,000, Goosebumps just didn't have the same social cachet that it once did. In 2000, Parachute signed an agreement with a different publisher, HarperCollins, to release Stine's future books, including a new horror series called The Nightmare Room, as well as another Goosebumps spin-off, Goosebumps Gold. However, Gold would never see the light of day, as it was quietly shuttered after its announcement, likely due to ongoing litigation between Parachute and Scholastic over the rights to the series. The final issue of Goosebumps 2000 would come in January of 2000, and after that, the series temporarily died before roaring back to life in 2008 with Goosebumps Horrorland. Goosebumps did the worst thing a media property can do at the height of its fame. It blinked. The various lawsuits between Parachute and Scholastic halted Goosebumps, allowing the likes of Harry Potter and Animorphs to take its place in the children's literary food chain.
And here's the thing. I say this as, like, obviously a huge Goosebumps fan. I was obsessed with this book series. I had every book. I lived, ate, and breathed this book series. Animorphs is way better. Animorphs is actually a very well written book series.
Did you read them in order? Like, did you follow Animorphs to the same feverish devotion that you did?
Not the same feverish devotion as Goosebumps, no, because I was like really into horror and just whatever reason I latched onto that. But I did read the Animorphs books in order because they have an ongoing story. Like Goosebumps, they're self-contained. It's an anthology series of different self-contained horror stories, and there's sequels, but outside of that, they're all just self-contained stories. But the Animorphs is an ongoing serialized story that focuses on one character in each book and them becoming a different animal, but it all has this larger mythology. And it's not even just that. It's not even that it's a serialized story. They're just way better written. The stories are interesting. The characters are interesting. They have like actual interesting things to say. Like there's actual like social commentary in them. They're just better books all around. Maybe not like in terms of like conceptually, I wasn't as interested in them. But they were just better. I actually just got my son the first 8 Animorphs books for his birthday because I don't personally own any of them anymore. Like I do the Goosebumps books, but they're just better books. it's not even a competition.
In 2003, the lawsuit ended. Scholastic agreed to pay $9.65 million for the rights and trademark of Goosebumps. But by that point, Scholastic paid nearly $10 million for a virtually dead franchise. The publisher would re-release the original 62 Goosebumps books with slightly different covers and push forward with additional series, with RL Stein back writing them. And the series would eventually get a theatrical adaptation in 2015 with Goosebumps, starring Jack Black as, surprisingly, RL Stein. Goosebumps is still around. Enough copies have been published to where kids can easily discover them in school libraries. There was no way for Goosebumps to maintain the same level of popularity indefinitely, and the lawsuits between Parachute and Scholastic definitely hastened its downfall. But amongst all of this talk of trademark, money, and royalties, there was one facet to the Goosebumps story that still needs to be excavated. Because if there's one person responsible for the meteoric success of Goosebumps, it's Tim Jacobus. Not R.L. Stein. Not anyone at Scholastic or Parachute. Tim Jacobus. Goosebumps really became as popular as it did thanks to the Scholastic Book Fair, and kids aren't reading synopsis on the back of these books before they buy whatever sounds like the most intellectually stimulating. They're picking whatever book looks the coolest. And if there's one thing that you can say about Goosebumps, especially during its original run, they looked amazing. Jacobus got his start making cover art for science fiction books before Scholastic was looking for someone to do the new kids horror series that they were working on. He submitted artwork for Welcome to Dead House, which features an upward perspective of a haunted house with a door ajar and a light on. Scholastic was jazzed about it.
If like Frank Frazetta's work is like a crystallization of that time in the 1970s and the 1980s, that sort of like Conan the Barbarian era of fantasy fiction that was like repopularized in the 80s, that was like a throwback to the 1930s and 40s. And if like, you know, Drew Struzan was also like in there in like the later 80s, and that was kind of the crystallization of that sort of like fantasy sci-fi aesthetic of that time period. Like Tim Jacobus's work is that encapsulation of like young adult fiction in the 90s and early 2000s. Like his style just like represents that entire era of young adult fiction. And it's just, and you know, I'm sort of like social proof of the fact that what is being said here is like absolutely true, because I was there and I remember it. I remember walking into the fucking bookstore and like seeing them across the room and my eyes going, Gronk! Like that,
the fuck is that?
That is why people bought these books. That is why kids bought these books. Obviously they read them. Obviously, R.L. Stein contributed to it in some way because he was writing them or his fucking assistants were writing them. And he came up with a concept and all these things. But like without these covers, this book series does not blow up and become a national phenomenon. It just doesn't.
Scholastic hired Jacobus thanks to his heavy use of coloring, and he continued making Goosebumps covers. Sometimes they were creepy, like a plant-like hand emerging from a door for Stay Out of the Basement, or you had a sillier one like Say Cheese and Die, which is a bunch of skeletons laughing around a barbecue. He used strong colors like a purple sky set against a green swamp in The Werewolf of Fever Swamp. He even played with perspective, like The Ghost Next Door, having the cover where the POV is looking down at some ghostly legs. Jacobus's art style perfectly matched R.L. Stein's writing tone, and when you were a kid deciding what to read next, you wanted to see what was up with those skeletons. R.L. Stein credits the covers with a lot of the series' success, and Jacobus's artwork became so important that Stein even started incorporating them into the stories. The two largely worked separately, with Stein, or his ghostwriters, making the story and Jacobus creating the artwork, and they largely wouldn't know what the other one was going to do until it was more or less finished. But Jacobus said this in an interview.
Years and years later, he said that he started to leave little spaces in the story for when the painting got delivered to him, and he could see some details that were there. He could drop in little details about it, like maybe he didn't know the skin would be purple. Okay, we'll put some purples, play up the purple skin.
Jacobus also created the series mascot, Curly, a skeleton with glasses and a pink mohawk that was used in countless pieces of merchandise. But most people have never heard of Jacobus's name. He's nowhere near as ubiquitous as the name R.L. Stein, and that's because he's not credited with the artwork in any of the books. Scholastic hired him in a work-for-hire basis, meaning he was an independent contractor. He got a couple $1,000 per cover and received no royalties, so, as he admitted in an interview with Vice,
"They paid me fine, but my payment wasn't attached to sales. It didn't make any difference whether they sold 1 million copies or 10. I don't live in a mansion."
Just to put it out there, R.L. Stein does in fact live in a mansion. And the two seem friendly, as Jacobus said that they still stay in touch all these years later.
"We text each other. I probably hear from him every couple of weeks. And it's never, hi, how are you? Or what are you doing? Almost every single time it's, did you see this Goosebumps tattoo? And he attaches it and sends it over. And yeah, we always get a kick out of it."
Work-for-hire agreements have been a bane of numerous professions, from writers to comic book artists to songwriters. People sign a contract for a lump sum, and the thing becomes huge. The person that was responsible for making it doesn't get any extra money. It's the way things are, but that doesn't mean it's the way things should be. But we can at least do our part in remembering the joy of Goosebumps and what it brought to children or hell, even adults, as we make sure to remember the name Tim Jacobus. Yeah, the thing I like about this story is that it feels like, I think a lot of the time when everybody who listens to the show knows that I am a fierce advocate for creator rights, and I'm constantly complaining about the way certain companies treat their artists and their writers and how it's immoral.
Collecta Alberto, or whatever the fuck you said your ghostwriter's name was.
Right, yeah, exactly. But the thing I like about this story is that at least one of the people isn't getting screwed over. You know, like, at least one of them is doing well. It's just really unfortunate that RL Stein doesn't seem to want to make any of that right. Like, I'd be curious if he has ever, behind the scenes in a non-public way, supported Tim and sent him a little cheddar. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Who knows? I don't know. It is interesting. It's like one of those conversations because the thing is like I made a video about this that got millions of views across different platforms. So similar to some of the past episodes we've done where it's been inspired by a video that I made, I sort of have seen the reaction to this already. These are things that we've talked about many times over the years, both on and off the podcast. And you've talked about them by yourself in other contexts, because it's a thing that is sort of near and dear to you and what you do as well. But it's really interesting to see the actual direct response rather than just speak about it hypothetically, like actually seeing thousands of people all kind of saying the same thing. And I've made a couple of videos where I've gotten a reaction like this. And I find it very fascinating how so many regular people just seem so primed to like side with a huge business over like a independent individual creator. Like so many people are so just by default wanting to side with some massive corporation over an artist. And it's just, you got to wonder like what's going on there. Some kind of animosity towards creative people, some kind of like, I want to be like a big, rich business person someday. So I have to like keep the, defend the defend the gate, so to speak. But so many people responded to this video basically saying the same thing, which is like, he didn't get screwed out of anything. He got hired to do a job and he was paid, and that was his contract, and that's what he did. And it's not anybody's fault but his that he, did the work on a contract, for hire and didn't get royalties. Like he should have either not done it or he should have gotten a better contract. Like that's the general reaction to it. And I just find it so interesting because it's like, yeah, like, yes, he did a work for hire contract where he was paid a lump sum for each painting, and that was the end, and that was it. Yes, absolutely, that's what happened. Nobody tricked him with like a deceitful contract or like breached the contract or went back on anything. Like everything that happened was legally above board, and everything that was done by the books. But I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about whether or not it was technically the legal thing that happened. I'm talking about from a human perspective. You create a book series. You hire this artist to create the covers. This thing becomes a cultural phenomenon. And not only does it become a cultural phenomenon that he was a part of and worked on, but also it seems from like everything that you can see with your eyes. And also there have been meta-analysis done of this. There's multiple business journals have done meta-analysis on this and have shown with data that the covers were largely responsible for the success of the book series. This thing becomes a cultural phenomenon. You can literally quantify with data that it is largely because of the work that he did, from a human perspective, give this guy something. Cut him in. It doesn't matter what the fuck contract you did, or like, well, technically because of this. Fuck that. Give him something. And I find it so insane
even if it's just a pittance for the self-defense, like you would think it would be, even if it's just a pittance for the self-defense of when people come to you and say, why isn't Tim Jacobus cut in on this? You can be like, well, actually he is. He is. Don't cancel me. He is.
Yeah, that's like that's like the Gregory brothers, the Shmo Yoho guys. Like they built a massive YouTube channel throughout the 2000s, basically like taking clips of news stories, of like interviews from the news and things like that, and like, you know, auto tune the news, like making like songs from them. Fucking the bed intruder guy. What has that song?
Hide your kids, hide your wife.
Yeah. Whatever, that song. They built this whole thing, and after a while they started to receive blowback of people being like, oh, you're just like taking these like people, most of them are black, and you're like taking their interviews and like monetizing them and making all this money. And they were just like, we give 50% of it to the people. And they just ended the conversation like that. And that bed intruder guy, he made a video where he was just like, do not come after the Gregory brothers. I bought a house. Like he was like, they just from the very beginning, before anything, they decided that they were going to give 50% of the iTunes sales revenue to the person or people in their videos. That was their policy from the beginning. So when they blew up and got massively popular and everybody was just like, aren't you like just like taking, you know, these people's thing and like making money off of it? They were just like, that we gave that guy like $1 million. like just you like what you're saying. It's just if only just for that, to just be able to be like, I'm not doing a problematic.
Yeah, I'm a good guy. I'm a good guy.
And it's not, and it's not like it would shave off the crema of your massive fortune.
Yeah.
It's not like you're being like, it's not like you're being like, give half of the money to this guy or whatever. Just a little bit of something that would like change his life and not affect yours at all.
Well, please remember that in the future when I'm destitute and you're a multi-billionaire.
I mean, isn't that already happening?
Touche. Well, on that note, I'm Dave Baker.
I'm Andrew Price.
This has been Deep Cuts. If you'd like to find me on the internet, you can do so at heydavebaker.com. Please go pick up my book, Pumpkinheads. It's my new book, coming-of-age romance comic about punk kids that live in a flop house and play in a band together.
Ghostwritten by
not
Alberto.
That, maybe, ghostwritten by Alberto. If not that, maybe one of my other books might appeal to you, like Forest Hills Bootleg Society, Mary Tyler Moorhawk, or Halloween Boy. Andrew, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me and pick up my book, Deadbolt AI Private Eye, by going to daspricerights.com and getting that. You can also find me on social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, at Treehouse Detective. I make short form explainer videos, fact videos, a lot of cool little stuff. I also make long form videos on YouTube, long form, 30 to 40 minute explainers, at Treehouse Detective on all platforms. And you can follow us on social media by going to Instagram at Deep Cuts Podcast, TikTok at Mystery Treehouse, Facebook, Deep Cuts Podcast. You can join our Discord server, bit.ly.com/Deep Cuts Discord. You can get merch from deepcutspod.com. You can follow our YouTube channel where we make long form explainer videos, 20 to 40 minutes long, youtube.com/@Mystery Treehouse. And you can also back our Patreon, bit.ly/Deep Cuts Patreon. You can back us in 3 exciting ways: pump the page, back the boys, get the goods.